How's it going, everyone? Mega Man here to talk about the patch notes for the upcoming patch version 1.19, which is scheduled to be released on February 15th. So this video is going to be part 1 of probably 5, and in this video I'm going to be talking about the universal parry changes that are going to be affecting all characters, and also I'm going to be going over Kensei's rework and kind of how I feel about Kensei and how I think he's going to play once this patch comes out. Alright, so first thing I want to talk about is the general parry changes that affect all the characters, and I'll talk about which characters it affects the most. So the biggest change is that you can now counter guard break if being grabbed during a parry reaction. So this is one of the changes that they've showed off many months ago, and they're finally implementing it. What it's going to do is going to basically speed up the flow of a fight. No longer it's going to be, parry into guard break, into throw into a wall, into heavy attack. This is obviously going to lower the damage output of a lot of characters, and I think it's going to make the fight flow a lot better. Now, the characters that this affects the most are Raider, Shigoki, and Centurion. Obviously, with Raider, he's very much a grappling character. If he guard breaks you, he can do a forward throw to charge you into a wall, and in that situation, if he has any teammates, they can attack you. You can't do anything about it. He can also do just a sideways throw into a wall where he can get a heavy attack, which Raider's heavy attacks do a lot of damage. Of course, if he just guard breaks you, he can just do his zone attack. So Raider is very strong off of guard breaks, and this is going to drastically reduce his power. For Shigoki, very similar. If he guard breaks you, he can do his, I think it's called the Demon Ball, where he, does that golf swing and just smacks the person and they go flying. Really useful for ledging people. That's pretty much what that's pretty much what it's used for, is just ledging people. So that's not going to be available. And of course, if he throws you into a wall, he can get either a heavy attack for 40 damage, or he can get a Demon's Embrace for 40 damage, and it also heals him. So those two things are going to be gone for Shigoki for the most part. So that's going to drastically lower Shigoki's power after a parry. And for Centurion, he has his 60 plus damage punish. If he guard breaks you and throws you into a wall, he gets his unblockable heavy, gets the charge jab, gets the Eagle's Talon. That punish is, for the most part, going to be not removed, but it's not going to happen as much. So parrying with Centurion is not going to be as strong. Even though he doesn't get a guard break, he can still at least do his parry counter. So if the opponent's behind a wall, he will throw them into the wall, and then he can still get the punish, but in most situations he's not going to get it. So Centurion does also get hit pretty hard by this change. Alright, so the next change is that parrying now moves you forward 1 meter, which previously it was 0. Now this is a very good change, and the reason for that is that some characters, some longer range characters like Nabushi or Lawbringer, if you were to parry their heavy attacks, a lot of times it would be out of range of your basic attacks, like your light attacks. The main example I could think of for this is like if you're playing Shaman, your opponent is playing Nabushi. If you were to parry Nabushi's heavy attack, Shaman can't even get a light attack, she can't get a zone attack, she can't get a dodge attack because they're not quick enough. So I think this means that no matter what, if you parry somebody's heavy attack or parry any attack, you will always be in range to do an attack to them. So this is a great change. So the next change is for heavy attack parries. So the heavy parry reaction is now 1500 milliseconds, which it was 1400, and now allows stance change during the last 100 milliseconds. So if I'm not mistaken, I believe this is for the person being parried. So from the moment they're parried into the point where they recover, it's going to be a total of 1500 milliseconds, and they're going to be able to change their guard in the last 100 milliseconds. So that's going to lead into the next change, which is if you parry a heavy, now you get 600 millisecond frame advantage in which your opponent cannot block, parry, or dodge. Now this is actually already how it is in the pre-patch version, so this isn't really a change. But the developers did say that if you parry a heavy attack, you will always be able to get a 600 millisecond light attack. And for most characters that is the case, but if they have a 500 millisecond attack. But if you're like Raider or Highlander and you have a 600 millisecond light attack, there were some situations where the opponent could still block it, which mostly revolved around if your opponent had a permanent guard and they did a heavy attack from one side, you parry it and you do a light attack from that same side, their guard would come back and they would be able to block it. Now, you could always just change your guard to another side and it would still hit them because the opponent couldn't change their guard in time. But the developers just made it so you will 100% hit them with the light attack, so the opponent's guard is not going to come back. So this is just mostly like a updated parry change. And the last parry change is for the light attack parries. So light attack parry reaction is 1800 milliseconds, but you can change your stance in the last 100. So just like the heavy parry reaction, the person being parried from the point they're parried until they recover is going to be 1800 milliseconds, and they can change their stance during the last 100. Now, if you parry a light attack, you get a 900 millisecond frame advantage. Now this is actually a change because in the pre-patch version, you get a 1000 millisecond advantage. So the characters that this affects are Raider with his top heavy because it's 1000. You're no longer going to get that, but it's fine for Raider because he can still get his side heavies and there's only a difference of 5 points of damage. Highlander can no longer get his basic heavy attacks, but that's fine because he can still get his offensive heavies, which actually got a damage buff. They're now going to do 40 damage, so that's still really good. Shigoki, even though he has slower heavy attacks, they did make a specific change for him so that he has a faster frame advantage, more frame advantage, and he can still get his heavies off a light parry. But the character it's going to affect the most is probably Centurion, because his fully charged standard heavies are 1000 milliseconds, and there's no specific change for Centurion. So if all things go correctly, Centurion's not going to be able to get his 60 damage punish off of a light parry anymore. So that in combination with not being able to get a guard break, Centurion is going to be a lot weaker. Alright, so now we get to the character that I have been waiting the longest to get a rework, and that's going to be Kensei. So we're going to start things off with the top heavy finisher cancels. So cancels to side attacks now happen 200 milliseconds later. So in pre-patch version, when he does his side cancels, they are really easy to notice and not really much of a mix-up. For the person on the receiving end of it, it's kind of just like, just watch and you can very easily tell when he's going to cancel it, and it's not a hard time reacting to it. So this is going to make it so the attacks are a little bit more ambiguous, and it might actually be a solid mix-up now. Next change is that all light finishers now have uninterruptible stance. So previously, only the side heavy finishers had uninterruptible, but now all the light finishers have uninterruptible. So this is mostly going to be strong in team-based modes, but of course it can find its way in to 1v1 situations. So next is the Cancellous Dodge now only happens at the same timing as the side cancels and the feint timing. So pre-patch, Kensei can basically start up his unblockable finisher and immediately cancel to a dodge. Like, you will not even see the unblockable animation start up, you can just immediately dodge cancel it. Some people really like this because you can do a very quick dodge cancel to guard break, and sometimes it catches people. So some people might see this as a nerf, but it's kind of more of like a tweak, and it kind of just puts everything at the same timing. It makes it a bit more ambiguous to when he's actually going to cancel to a guard break, because now you can cancel it as late as possible, where before you basically chose when you wanted to cancel it. The next change is that it can now be canceled into a guard break. So I'm assuming this just means when you're starting or when you're doing the unblockable, just press guard break and it just does a guard break. You don't have to feint it normally. This is, I mean, a lot of Kenseis do this anyway, but I think this is going to mean that you're not going to use the extra stamina to have to feint it manually. And the top heavy finisher has a new animation. So they took away the whole like jump in the air and then, you know, chop down on him animation, and they gave it a more clean looking animation so that his cancels now flow a lot better. They look a lot more smooth. So the next batch of changes are for all of his top heavies, and that is that all of them can be cancelled in various different ways. So his first top heavy can be cancelled into side attacks, dodge, and the new melee move Pummel Strike, and the second top heavies can be cancelled into the second attacks, dodge, and now guard break. So all of these are new features. He can never do these before, so he can cancel the top heavies into side attacks, he can dodge cancel them all, and the first heavy he can cancel to the Pummel Strike, which I'll get to in a bit, and the second one he can cancel it directly into a guard break. The next change is for the timing of his attacks. So his top heavies are now 1000 milliseconds, which they were 700 on the first and the second ones, and the side lights for both the first and second lights are now 500 milliseconds if you cancel them from the top heavy. So it makes them a bit quicker, which is going to help Kensei a lot. And the third strikes are now 500 milliseconds as well, but this is applied to the regular version as well as the canceled versions. So this makes all his light attacks a lot faster than Kensei normally has. It's going to help him out a lot in fights. And the last part is for the priority changes, and that is that for the recovery of the light attacks, it switches the input priority so that it checks for a heavy input first. This means it should be slightly easier to perform a heavy into light cancel than it would be before when it looked for a light input first. So this is just like a quality of life change for Kensei, so making it easier for the player to soft feint a heavy attack into a light attack. And the last thing is that dodge cancels can now only be performed when Kensei has stamina. This is something that has been available on other characters like Berserker and Shaman, where they can dodge cancel their moves even though they don't have any stamina left. This is just making sure that Kensei doesn't get that unnecessary feature. Alright, so next there are a few damage changes. So his first side lights are going to do 12 damage, which they were 20. His second side lights are going to do 16, which they were 20. And his third side lights are going to do 20, which they were 25. Note that they don't say anything about his top lights. So just according to this, his top lights are still going to do 20 damage on the first and second hits, and his third top light is going to do 25. Now, the first top heavy and the second top heavy are both going to do 40 damage, which the first one was 30 and the second one was 20. The reason they increased the damage, obviously because they slowed down the moves. They're both 1000 milliseconds, which they were 700, so slower attack, more damage, pretty simple. Next thing we're going to talk about is the Pummel Strike, which is Kensei's new move. And so the first top heavy can now be cancelled into an unblockable Pummel Strike. Now they don't say anything else about this move in these patch notes, but they did say a lot more about it in the gameplay footage, and from what the developer said, this is a incredibly powerful move. Alright, so first things first is that it's performed by starting a first top heavy and then pressing the guard break button. It is a melee move and not an attack, so it cannot be parried, which already makes it very strong. In terms of the stamina cost, it looked to be about a health bar worth of stamina. So if you were to compare a health bar and the stamina bar, you just take out a health bar chunk out of the stamina, and that's pretty much how it would be. I don't know the exact number though. This move does guarantee a second light attack, which means that this move counts as the first hit of a chain. It guarantees the second light attack, and then you can go into a chain finisher mix up after that. They didn't mention which light attack it guaranteed, they just said all. So we can see that the damage of the light attacks, all the side lights have been nerfed, but the top light damage is still the same from as far as we can tell. So this means that this move is going to guarantee a 20 damage top light, which is already insane. I'm really not sure how I feel about that. It's a bit too much damage. Maybe if they gave him a different move that follows up the Pummel Strike to be guaranteed, something unique, a unique light attack that always happens, and it does maybe like 10 damage or something, that would be a little more balanced. But getting a 20 damage light attack off of a unparryable, unblockable is a little bit crazy. And I'll probably talk about more about this move and how I think it's probably going to be the best move in the game. But yeah, we'll get on to something else. Alright, so next are the new attack chains that have been added. So heavy, light, light chain, heavy, light, heavy chain, heavy, heavy, light chain, and light, heavy, light chain have been added. This means that Kensei can do any combination of lights and heavies in his 3 attack chain. This is something that I want to eventually be implemented on all characters. Since Aramusha came out, Aramusha can obviously do any combination of lights and heavies as part of his infinite chain, and I think that would be a very easy thing to implement for all the other characters, and it would kind of just be a simple way to buff everybody. Alright, so next are heavy hit block reaction. So the first top heavy now causes a heavy hit block reaction, which it was medium, and the second heavy in the chain from any direction now causes a heavy hit block reaction, which also was medium. So this means that the opponent will spend more time in a hit block recovery, and for an example, if you were to hit a second heavy and then go for the top heavy finisher, the opponent cannot launch a 500 millisecond attack in time to counter the top heavy finisher. This basically means if you were to land a second heavy attack, your opponent has to deal with your top heavy mix-up. This was a pretty big problem with assassins, because obviously assassins have really fast attacks for the most part, and if Kensei were to do his top heavy unblockable, they could easily just hit him out of it, just completely avoiding the mix-up, or obviously just dodge out of it, but the main problem is that they could hit him out of it. So this is a nice way to buff the mix-up without actually like giving him more damage. So the next changes are for the Swish Strike, which is Kensei's side dodge attacks. So Swish Strike now causes heavy hit block reaction, which it was medium. This is a similar change to his second heavies from the last segment. This basically means that if you land one of these attacks, you can safely go into your unblockable mix-up. The Swish Strike is now performed with the heavy input button. It is now considered a heavy attack, allows executions, costs 12 stamina, which it was 6, and suffers heavy parry penalty. So these are all very nice changes. The Swish Strike was never that strong of a move to begin with, because it was a light attack, and if you got parried, that means you would take a heavy attack, and even if you landed the Swish Strike, it doesn't really allow you to safely follow up on anything. But now that they made it a heavy attack and it causes heavy stagger, you take less damage from it getting parried, and also you can safely follow up into your unblockable mix-ups. Alright, next is for the Helm Splitter, which is the forward dodging light attack. So the Helm Splitter is now considered a light attack again and is interrupted when blocked, and the Helm Splitter damage is now reduced to 17 from 20. So these are not really that important changes, but there is a change later on that they didn't mention right here, and that's you can perform the Helm Splitter after 100 milliseconds into your forward dodge instead of after 300, which is how it is pre-patch. So this is a really good change because the Helm Splitter attack is 500 milliseconds by itself, and since you can start it after 100 milliseconds into your dodge, it's a total of 600, meaning that hopefully if you parry a heavy attack, you can dodge forward, do Helm Splitter, it'll be guaranteed, and then you can go into your unblockable mix-up after that. That was something I always thought would be really useful for Kensei, because it's a quick way to just get into your mix-up, and it might help Kensei out in certain situations. Alright, so next is the Nature's Wrath, which is a new move, and it's performed by pressing forward dodge into heavy. And this is visualized as an overhead strike using the old top heavy finisher animation. The attack is blockable, it's 800 milliseconds, it does 20 damage, and it has huge forward movement. So this is going to be a very good move if your opponent keeps trying to back roll away from your unblockable mix-up. You can use this to roll catch them, and I also think it's going to be very strong in 4v4 modes as a good way to initiate a fight from a far distance away. So the next changes are for Kensei's dodges. So the forward dodge superior block phase now starts from 100 milliseconds until the end of the dodge, and now is always in the top stance, and this also goes for the right dodge and the left dodge. This makes it on par with Conqueror and Valkyrie's superior block on their dodges, so when any of these three characters dodges to the left, right, or forward, their guard will automatically change to that side. This makes it so it's a lot easier to deflect a opponent's attack, because all you have to do is input the dodge and you don't actually have to change your stance like Kensei had to do previously. Also, at the end of the dodge, Kensei will keep the stance he was forced into by the dodge, and on backwards dodges, he will keep the current stance he's in for the entire dodge. So Kensei can perform his dodge attacks after superior blocking an attack, even if it's late in the dodge. So that means that even if you've missed the timing on the dodge attack, when you block something with superior block, you can still input the dodge attack. So this makes it kind of more like a deflect on every other character. Helm Splitter can now be launched starting at 100 milliseconds, which it was 300. This is the change I was talking about not too long ago, basically meaning that Helm Splitter is going to be a total of 600 milliseconds if you do it as fast as you can. And the Grasping Punch, which is his forward dodge and guard break, can now only be launched starting at 100 milliseconds, which it used to be 0. So I guess they just thought this was a bit too strong, so they gave it an extra 100 milliseconds before you can launch it. The last important change for Kensei is the zone attack. So the zone attack has been changed into a 3-striking attack. The first strike is 500 milliseconds from the left stance, hitting your locked target. It then flows into a similar version of the old zone attack for the second and third strikes. Zone attack no longer has uninterruptible stance, and all strikes have increased knockback when in revenge. So this is a change that is definitely needed for Kensei. His zone attack has pretty much never been useful in any situation in the game, not even in Dominion, not even when you're getting teamed up on. At least in this situation, he now has a 500 millisecond attack, starting attack from the left side. This means, you know, he has now a fast top plate and a fast left side attack. The first hit of the zone attack is also going to do 20 damage, so decent damage in terms of his top plate and his zone attack. So he's kind of got the Orochi thing going on here. He's got 2 fast starting attacks, which is really nice for Kensei. And from what I saw, the attacking animation, it looks like the first hit is going to hit like 180 degrees in front of him, and then obviously the second hit is going to hit 180 degrees behind him, and then the third hit hits in front of him again. So it's going to be a pretty good move to keep away the opponents because of how many times it hits. Hopefully it's cancelable after the first hit. That would be really useful, but from what I saw, it looks to be only cancelable after the second hit. But still, they did make the zone attack 100 times better and more useful than it used to be. Alright guys, that's going to be it for this video. I know this video is a lot longer than most of my other videos, but there's just so much to go over with the parry changes and the Kensei rework. There's just so much to talk about. I really just wanted to get this out to you guys. I hope you guys can post some comments and tell me what you think about Kensei and all these changes, what you think is too good. I personally think the Pummel Strike is going to be like the best move in the game, but depending on how fast it recovers when he misses it, it might not be as good as I think, but from the looks of it, it's going to be amazing, and I hope that it's probably going to get nerfed. I'm calling it right now. But anyway, thank you guys for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed. I'll talk to you guys in my next video.